Shabbat Shalom. We are today looking at Parasha Vayera. Vayera is from the root to see, and it relates to vision and to one who is a visionary. Only in the scriptures, among all the world's holy books, are we allowed to see people, even righteous people, like the patriarchs and matriarchs, as they really are, human and not as icons of perfection. Our forefathers and mothers were ultimately proved righteous, but they were certainly not perfect and not always right, not always holy. It is only God's standards of righteousness revealed to our people and written down in the Torah, which set the godly apart from the wicked. There are many in the world who would like to tell you that one can know good from evil without knowing that there is a God or believing that there is a God. But without the standards that he gives, there are no standards. They're simply whatever you think is right. As it says in one place in the scriptures, and they did what was right in their own eyes. Hashem's standards were made known to humankind, and they were followed by those who sought to know him, people like Noach and Avraham. God's mishpatim, his laws, given prophetically to those who honored him, were eventually written down in the tablets of the Torah. It is his righteous standards that are recognized and affirmed by our prophets and by Rav Yeshua. In the beginning of this parasha, God asks an interesting question. He asks it of himself. Should I hide my plan from Avraham, who will become a great nation? I love him because he is righteous and because he does what I say. He's obedient. God appeared to Avraham and announced that he had seen and heard the terrible activities taking place in the cities of Sodom and Gomorrah. Once the facts on the ground had been acquired, God declares his intention that these two cities will be destroyed. Avraham, God's righteous and humble servant, approaches God, and apparently people think that he's seeking a bargain with him. But in reality, Avraham has a much deeper quest. He wants to know and understand the mind of Hashem and the basis of his justice. So he says to God, "For 50 righteous men, will you destroy the city? How can you bring death to the righteous in the same breath as the wicked?" he asks. God knows that there is no one righteous in these cities, but he agrees with Avraham. Yes, if there are 50 people here who are righteous, I won't destroy the city. Avraham seems also to have his doubts about whether or not there might be 50 people there who are righteous. So he says, okay, I know I'm like dust compared to you, but how about 45 righteous people? And God responds, yes, for 45, the city will be spared. Avraham continues in this way in his quest to stay God's anger against Sodom and Gomorrah until he has gone from 50 to 10? Okay, final question. Will you destroy the city if there are 10 good people there? And God replies, I will not destroy the cities if there are even 10. Why do you think God advised Abraham that the cities of Sodom and Gomorrah would be destroyed? God's announcement to Abraham was that they would be destroyed because their sin had become acute, critical, dire. After Abraham's discussion with God, the cities were destroyed, not merely for their wickedness, but because they lacked even 10 people, a minion, to carry out an attempt at righteousness. Abraham witnessed the power of God, and this was his response. Shall the judge of all the earth not do justice? Abraham viewed God's character, even as he pressed God concerning the possibility that there might be righteous people, either in Sodom or Gomorrah. Abraham understood the heart of God as he declared, it would be a sacrilege to bring death upon the righteous along with the wicked. We emerge from the services of Yom Kippur each year with the understanding that even one who has sinned can be forgiven. We follow Yom Kippur with Sukkot, moving at least spiritually from our cozy homes into an impermanent, poorly covered hut. We read from Ecclesiastes, which instructs us that the fate of the strongest among us is the same as the weakest. The contrasts of Ecclesiastes challenge us to re-examine what we know and how we perceive Hashem. And the narrative of our father Abraham teaches us to ask questions, even of God, and yet to also take God at his word. And so we come to the sacrifice of Yitzhak. Would Abraham have sacrificed Yitzhak? He was willing to do so, but he also knew that God would only command what was just and in accordance with his own nature and character. He knew Hashem would provide a sacrifice as he had provided his son. If we read a verse from the Torah that seems to contradict our understanding of the nature of God, we must ask the same question as Abraham. Would the judge of all the earth not do justice? Why did God tell Abraham that he planned to destroy Sodom and Gomorrah? Why not just do it? Perhaps God was really saying, I've just told you that I plan to annihilate these two cities. Have I endowed you with life so that you can be passive in the face of such a statement? Our sages contrast Abraham, who defended the inhabitants of Sodom, with Noah, who was informed by God of the destruction of all humankind. Perhaps this, they maintain, is the reason Abraham, rather than Noah, became the father of our people. One of our rabbis has said that the process of true spiritual growth and of learning to live a spiritual life is based in considering possibilities we have never considered and giving up long-held assumptions. It was Abraham's special privilege to experience God's intervention in his life and that of his son with what must have been a breathtaking moment of intensity. Would the judge of all the earth not do justice? God is always just, and it is his brand of justice that we must always seek. This kind of justice is life itself. What do we know about Sodom and Gomorrah? In commentaries on Genesis, a collection of ancient commentaries on various passages and narratives of Sefer Bereshit, which date from the Second Temple period, the time of Rav Yeshua, which means they were written several centuries before the redaction of the existing Midrashic anthologies, which became the Talmud. This commentary retells the narrative, citing verses from chapter 18 and relating this passage to the law on a subverted city from Devarim 13, verses 13 through 18. If you hear it said about one of the towns the Lord your God is giving you to live in, that troublemakers have arisen among you and have led the people of their town astray, saying, "Let us go and worship other gods, gods you have not known," then you must inquire, probe, and investigate it thoroughly. And if it is true, and it has been proved that this detestable thing has been done among you, you must certainly put to the sword all who live in that town. You must destroy it completely, its people and its livestock. You are to gather all the plunder of the town into the middle of the public square and completely burn the town and all its plunder as a whole burnt offering to the Lord your God. That town is to remain a ruin forever, never to be rebuilt, and none of the condemned things are to be found in your hands. Then the Lord will turn from his fierce anger, will show you mercy, and will have compassion on you. He will increase your numbers, as he promised on oath to our ancestors, because you obey the Lord your God by keeping all his commandments that I am giving you today and doing what is right in his eyes. Also mentioned is the law on the treatment of Canaanite cities, Devarim 20. This is how you are to treat all the cities that are at a distance from you and do not belong to the nations nearby. However, in the cities of the nations the Lord your God is giving you as an inheritance, do not leave alive anything that breathes. Completely destroy them. The Hittites, Amorites, Canaanites, Perizzites, Hivites, and Jebusites, as the Lord your God has commanded you. Otherwise, they will teach you to follow all their detestable things that they do in worshiping their gods, and you will sin against the Lord your God. The principles in which God's judgment of Sodom and Gomorrah are basically part of God's eternal law, written down in Torah. And these have been our heritage since the Second Temple period. What of the fate of the wicked of Sodom and Gomorrah? What do you think of the idea that the wicked of Sodom and Gomorrah should be allowed to live if at least 10 righteous people lived there? Is it right that God should forgive all by virtue of 10 righteous people? When God said, I will forgive the whole place for their sake, and I will not destroy for the sake of 10, could this have meant that the wicked would also be saved? Sinners might be rewarded? On the face of it, this appears to be the case with the biblical text, but the commentary explains, if there are not even 10 righteous in the city, the entire place will be destroyed, and its fate will be like that which the Torah commands the Bnei Israel to do regarding a city nearby, given over entirely to pagan worship, destruction, and condemnation. The fate of the wicked is not the main point of this narrative. Abraham's discussion with God is about the fate of the city, assuming that some innocent beings must live there. This discussion only relates incidentally to the wicked. Will you sweep away the innocent with the guilty, so that innocent and guilty fare alike? Abraham did not dispute that the wicked must be punished, that they should perish, but he does attempt to separate the deeds of the wicked as individuals from the fate of the city as a whole. The fate of the wicked, however, is the issue that deserves the greatest attention. Yechezkel 14 sets forth these principles of Hashem. If a country sins against me by being unfaithful, and I stretch out my hand against it to cut off its food supply and send famine upon it and kill its people and their animals, even if these 3 men, Noach, Daniel, and Yov, were in it, they could save only themselves by their righteousness, declares the sovereign Lord. Or if I send wild beasts through that country and they leave it childless and it becomes desolate so that no one can pass through it because of the beasts, as surely as I live, declares the sovereign Lord, even if these 3 men were in it, they could not save their own sons or daughters. They alone would be saved, but the land would be desolate. Or if I bring a sword against that country and say, let the sword pass through the land, and I kill its people and their animals, as surely as I live, declares the sovereign Lord, even if these 3 men were in it, they could not save their own sons or daughters. They alone would be saved. Or if I send a plague into that land and pour out my wrath on it through bloodshed, killing its people and their animals, as surely as I live, declares the sovereign Lord, even if Noach, Daniel, and Yov were in it, they could save neither son nor daughter. They could only save themselves by their righteousness. In a city where most of the inhabitants are wicked, the small handful of righteous in the city, even if they were as righteous as Noach, Daniel, and Yov, will only succeed in delivering themselves, not their city, not even their own children. There is no absolution of sinners for the sake of the righteous, as each receives retribution according to his or her deeds. This is God's perspective, and it has not changed. Clearly, this statement does away with the idea that one might seek to obtain deliverance on the merits of one's ancestors or other righteous individuals. This is the sort of thinking that Rav Yeshua and his Talmudim confronted. Rav Yeshua in Mattatyahu 3:9 declared, if you were Abraham's children, you would do the works of Abraham. Torah sets forth the strictest basis for justice, but is careful to consider that even if God might forgive the city as a whole, as in the case of Nineveh, the wicked will still be judged individually for their sins. What of the future of Lot and his family? Well, here the narrative tells us that 2 Malachim, or messengers of God, angels, arrived in Sodom in the evening, and they were met by Lot, Abraham's nephew. Lot was sitting at the gate of the city with the other elders of the town when they arrived. And we already know that these elders are wicked people. He courteously stood and bowed to them in greeting, although it does not say that his companions did likewise. And he invited them to stay with him and his family for the night. The Malachim declined to go with him, saying they will stay in the town square. But Lot insisted, and they followed him to his home. There he prepared a feast in their honor. But while they were eating and relaxing, men of Sodom knock on Lot's door, shouting, "Where are these men? Bring them so that we may know them." Know meaning to have a sexual relationship with them. Lot slips outside and shuts the door behind him, and he begs the mob to leave his guests in peace. In order to placate the townsmen, he even offers his 2 virgin daughters to them instead, indicating clearly that the desire of the mob is sexual in nature. The mob presses upon Lot and eventually tries to break down the door. The Malachim pull Lot into the house and shut the door in order to save his life. They then announce to him the reason for their visit. They have come as representatives of the Most High God to destroy the city. They tell Lot to get his wife and family and leave Sodom. But his son-in-laws, they think this is some sort of joke, or perhaps that Lot is crazy. At dawn, God's messengers urge Lot to take his wife and his 2 unwed daughters and depart. But still, Lot lingers. Is he counting the cost of leaving everything that he has amassed in the way of wealth behind him? The Malachim must finally grasp Lot, his wife and daughters, and drag them from the city, saying, "Run to the mountains and don't look back. Don't stop, or you will be swept away too." Lot argues, "Please, the mountains are too far away. There's a city nearby. We can go there. Please." We read in Bereshit 19, "But Lot said to them, 'No, my lords, please, if your servant has found favor in your eyes, you have shown great kindness to me in sparing my life, but I can't flee to the mountains. This disaster will overtake me and I'll die. Look, here is a town near enough to run to, and it's small. Let me flee to it. It's very small, isn't it? Then my life will be spared." He said to him, "Very well. I will grant this request too. I will not overthrow the town you speak of, but flee there quickly, because I cannot do anything until you reach it." By the time Lot reached Zoar, The sun had risen over the land. Then the Lord rained down burning sulfur on Sodom and Gomorrah from out of heavens. Thus he overthrew those cities and the entire plain, destroying all those living in the cities and also the vegetation in the land. But Lot's wife looked back, and she became a pillar of salt. Lot could hardly bring himself to escape, and even then he wasn't willing to distance himself from the evil cities of the plain. Lot's wife was unable to leave the past behind her. She turned to gaze in sorrow at what she was leaving and was turned to salt. In Shimon Kifa Beit, chapter 2, verse 8, we read, "Yes, Lot was a righteous man who was tormented in his soul by the wickedness he saw and heard day after day." But we must ask the question, if Lot struggled with the wickedness of those around him, why didn't he leave Sodom? The scriptures tell us, do not be misled. Bad company corrupts good character. We find this to be more than true in the last act of Lot's story. The two daughters of Lot, who we have been told were virgins, assumed that the whole world had been destroyed. Certainly everything they knew was gone. Having grown up in the evil and immoral world of Sodom, they have not even been taught right from wrong. And so they conspire together to repopulate the world, or at the very least, to reestablish their family in the only way they know, by having sex with their father. They apparently knew enough to realize that Lot might not actually agree to this proposition, so they managed to get him drunk on wine. And then the elder of the two girls proceeds to have sex with him. And the next day, they do the same again, but this time the younger daughter sleeps with Lot. Apparently, on both occasions, Lot is not aware of either daughter lying down with him or getting up. But eventually it's discovered that both daughters are pregnant. These incestuous relationships result in the birth of two sons, Moab and Ben-Ami, who would become the fathers of two people groups who would, like the son of Hagar, haunt the people of Israel until they were no more. The Moabites and the Ammonites. Early the next morning, Avraham got up and returned to the place where he had stood before Hashem, remembering, no doubt, the conversation he had with God and the consequences of it. He looked down from the hills towards Sodom and Gomorrah, where his nephew had chosen to live among the wicked, and he saw only dense smoke rising from the land, as from a furnace. We read, "When God destroyed the cities of the plain, he remembered Avraham, and he brought Lot out of the catastrophe that overthrew the cities where Lot had lived." Although God destroyed the cities of the plain, whose people deserved judgment, our merciful God delivered Lot for the sake of his righteous servant Avraham. When our leaders defended themselves against Yeshua's criticism by saying, "Avraham is our father," Yeshua said to them, if you are the children of Abraham, do the things Abraham did. Please continue to pray for our people in the land and around the world under attack. Am Yisrael Chai, the people of Israel live, because our God is alive. Shabbat Shalom.